Want to hear a whopper? Introduction. Have you ever noticed that when folks talk about Satan, they tend to talk in terms of haunted houses, demon possession, and the rituals of satanic cults? That's the way Satan wants it. While those things may well tell us a bit about what he does, they certainly don't tell us who he is. But Satan doesn't want us to know who he is, or, for that matter, all that much about what he does. He knows that if we knew the truth, it could and would thwart what he has planned. So we have to look a bit deeper than demon possession and satanic rituals to uncover what Satan has been up to recently. Satan can be aptly described in many different ways. A few of the more select terms that readily come to mind are moron, idiot, imbecile, lame brain, and dolt. But that is only because he has chosen not to believe the truth. None of these terms accurately capture the essence of his nature. For that, one must resort to the four-letter word liar. Should you doubt that, let me remind you of what Jesus rather rudely told some of his contemporaries. John 8:44. You are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. What Jesus said in that verse applies to anyone who rejects the truth when they have the opportunity to hear it. But that's not the point I want to make. When you hear that verse mentioned, you probably also hear the well-worn story about how Satan deceived Eve, and that's the end of it. When was the last time anyone told you Satan is still alive and well, deceiving people all the time? When have you been warned to carefully examine what you believe, lest you too be deceived by the liar? But more to the point, when have you ever considered the possibility that Satan might already have you believing one of his lies? If you have never been warned that you might be caught in Satan's web, you are certainly being warned now. Satan is well on his way toward accomplishing his greatest deception, exactly as the scriptures tell us he will before the end. So you had best take heed if you know what's good for you. But before I get into explaining Satan's deception, let me remind you what the scriptures have to say about the liar's plan. In the book of Revelation, the Apostle John refers to Satan's deception in 3 different places. The first is in his description of how Satan comes to be on earth. Revelation 12:9. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. John's second reference to Satan's great, grand, and as he believes, glorious deception can be found in a passage where John describes events that will occur when the Antichrist appears. Revelation 13:14. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. John's final mention of Satan's deception occurs in his account of Satan's imprisonment. Revelation 20:1-3. And I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key of the abyss, and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the abyss, and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he should not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things, he must be released for a short time. These are not the only places in the scriptures where Satan's deception is mentioned, however. The prophets talk about it all the time. For the most part, they refer to his deceit only cryptically, and they describe it in terms of parabolic imagery. The Apostle Paul does that as well, but he also outlines it openly in what he says concerning the Antichrist. 2 Thessalonians 2:8-12. And then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan with all power and signs and false wonders, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. And for this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence, so that they might believe what is false, in order that they may all be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. So there you have it. The Scriptures plainly tell us Satan, in keeping with his character as the consummate liar, is planning to do his best to wrap things up all neat and tidy here at the end by foisting off one whale of a deception on those who don't want to know the truth. Now, we know from what Jesus said that Satan is first and foremost a liar, and we also know from what the apostles John and Paul tell us that he plans to deceive the whole world when he appears in the person of the Antichrist. So it makes sense to me, but perhaps not to you, that Satan would try to accomplish that by corrupting the truth God has revealed in the Scriptures. That is, we should logically expect him, in whatever way he possibly can, to be constantly working to distort what Jesus Christ instructed the church to teach. You may choose to believe otherwise. If so, I have no doubt you are of the same mind as those to whom Jesus was speaking when he called Satan a liar. The truth is, Satan has already put in place the deception by which he intends to deceive the whole world. It exists in the form of a teaching that has, like the tentacles of an octopus, spread throughout the evangelical wing of the Protestant Church. It has been ensnaring true believers one by one for the past 170 years. Therefore, most Christians today have unwittingly accepted Satan's lie without even knowing what it is or how it got into the church. That's why I'm going to tell you what you need to know about Satan's lie. Then, if you don't believe me, I won't be responsible for you being taken in by it. If you doubt that Satan could ever accomplish what I just described, you really should wake up and smell the barnyard. Why do you think the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches teach so many different doctrines? What reason do you give for the fact that the Protestant Church believes things the Roman Catholic Church hasn't given much more than lip service to since the 4th century? I won't even bother to remind you there are thousands of Protestant denominations and sects that hold some ridiculous belief that nobody had ever heard of until their founder thought it up. I'll simply tell you that if you deny that Satan has been fostering false doctrine in the church and still claim to be a Protestant, you need to have someone replace your central processing unit, or at the very least, upgrade your memory. Your equipment is quite obviously malfunctioning. The Protestant Reformers, the men who gave rise to the Protestant Church, all believed the leaders of the Roman Catholic Church were teaching false doctrines because Satan had deceived them. That is the reason they gave for their assertion that the church had lost the teaching they claimed to be restoring. As a matter of fact, until the beginning of the 20th century, many in the Protestant Church continued to believe the church had lost some essential belief that still needed to be restored. By 1900, however, when Pentecostals decided their doctrine concerning the baptism of the Holy Spirit was the one remaining thing the church had lost, the Protestant Church, for the most part, had given up trying to restore lost truth. Consequently, today, we face the sad situation in which idiots who claim to be Protestant reject their own heritage by denouncing anyone who claims the church ever lost anything. Those who hold that view merely reveal their ignorance of church history. Any born-again believer with even a shred of common sense should be able to see that Satan has deceived the church to one degree or another over the past 1800 years, ever since the early church turned aside from the way under the tutelage of Origen the idiot. That has in no way thwarted God's plan and purpose for the church, however, because the church has, in every generation, still had the many who have understood and believed the truth of the gospel. That will not change, even at the height of Satan's deception here at the end. After all, God has ways of accomplishing things that Satan would like to think are impossible. You must understand, I use the term gospel to mean the basic truth concerning Jesus Christ that one must believe in order to be born again. However, I make that distinction here only because I am going to use it to show you how Satan has crafted a delusion that has already deceived most born-again believers in our own generation. He has done so by making sure his delusion is preached right alongside the gospel. Even that unhappy circumstance would not be so troublesome were it not for the fact that Satan intends to use his lie to completely invalidate one central truth that all true believers believe about Jesus Christ. As Jesus warned us, Satan will do that by pretending to be Jesus Christ himself. Matthew 24:23 through 25. Then, if anyone says to you, "Behold, here is the Christ," or "There he is," do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. Behold, I have told you in advance. Please don't misunderstand me. God has, in all ages, redeemed a multitude who believed far greater lies and understood much less truth than true believers do today. So whether or not one believes a lie is not the issue. The essence of the problem has to do with the content of the lie that one chooses to believe. Look at it logically. If we had to believe the whole truth and nothing but the truth in order to be saved, none of us could be saved. Paul plainly tells us we know only in part. Yet there is obviously a bare minimum of truth that one must believe in order to be saved. Otherwise, we could be saved, as some morons in the church today would have us understand, by believing nothing at all. The truth is, Satan's lies are a problem for true believers only when they cause them to give up some essential truth. That is why the Protestant Church has repeatedly identified eschatology as an area in which one's beliefs are not essential to salvation. I will readily admit that has been the case until now, but what has been is about to change. And I warn you, if you don't pay attention when attention is due, you will pay the debt you owe God with something you deem much more valuable later on. Having said that, I have exonerated myself and made you responsible for whether or not you choose to believe the things I'm going to tell you now. You see, we all act in accordance with what we believe. Since I have explained that concept repeatedly in other places, I need not dwell on it here. Satan knows our beliefs determine our actions. So it's too bad for you if you don't, because he fully intends to make you act in accordance with his lie. I only mention the relationship between beliefs and actions because for the past 170 years, Satan has been herding the church toward a circumstance wherein the beliefs you hold concerning the second coming of Christ are going to determine your eternal destiny. If that sounds ridiculous to you, read on. Perhaps you will get a chuckle out of the things God has called me to proclaim. But before you enjoy a good, hearty laugh at my expense, let me remind you of the eternal verity you may have forgotten. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. That's just another way of saying, the one who laughs last will laugh the loudest, and by far the longest, in the sweet by and by. That proverbial fat lady hasn't even entered the theater. Yet. So by all means, keep on laughing while time is still on your side. I am more than willing to let eternity tell which of us is the brainless one. As the saying goes, it's not what you don't know that's dangerous, it's what you think you know. But that's just another way of putting an old adage I'm rather fond of. Assumptions will kill you. So if you want to assume I'm just another religious crackpot, go right ahead. I'll be the first to admit it's your God-given right.